Welcome to this unique log that is situated between log 41 and log 42. Given that I'm not currently in my studio, not currently in my normal schedule, I am traveling and I'm going to be back on the next log. And I decided to, rather than leaving this day without having to post anything, given that I'm doing my obligation in the UK, having to help the situation that I'm in, I decided to make this little log and sort of go through some of my ponderings on the theme before I come back and resume my daily sort of routine. So this log is going to be sort of my thoughts on the deadline and how I feel about the whole sort of progress so far, and some of my surprises and so on and so forth. The biggest worry, I would say, is that the more time that I would spend on this, the more time I will sort of fixate on it. And what I mean about this is that the more time I fixate on the stonemason's sort of artistic endeavors, the more time I'm taking away from its point. There is a level of iterations that you can do in a design where it's needed, and there's another level when you begin to overwork it and really sort of substitute and feed off the vanity of a design. Vanity in this case meaning the superficial visual part of the design, where it serves no purpose other than to feel and satisfy the ego of you being able to do something amazingly, or to the concept of what amazingly is defined to the artist. And I'm being very weary of it. I'm being very conscious of not attempting to touch on that, as that is of no use to me and of no help to anything that has to do in the story. And the reason why I'm bringing this up, it's because on the 25th of December, it's my date that I want to reach. As of now, I have quite a bit of work to do. Mainly is the three major designs. The three major designs are 2 to almost 3 times as big as the 6 compositions that I've just finished. And I'm trying to really comprehend how much time they will take me, given that I take around a month to finish one of the smaller designs. How much time will it take to finish the bigger designs? Now, when I come back from this trip, it's going to be on the 15th of August. And my plan as of now, if nothing changes, will go as follow. It will go as, during my traveling time, I'm going to be writing and sort of orchestrating the re-advertisement of Flow's remaining paintings. And when I get back, I can release that as a blog and do all the necessary thing that needs that. And then I have to go and revisit all the 3 compositions and update them in the Photoshop versions of them, take away things, add new things, and now that I have a better grasp of the situation. And that is probably going to take the whole August. So by the end of August, I'm going to be ready to tackle the 3 compositions, and everything that I had to do that has been placed on the back burner will be dealt with, and I can keep moving forward, which is great. So September, October, November are the months that I can really work towards the compositions. And if everything goes well, I can take a month for each. And after that remains December, where I have to pile everything together, add the other designs if that needs, like the small ones, which are really easy to do, and then compile everything together, which is a bit unrealistic, if I am honest. But it doesn't worry me, as if I don't reach the deadline, things will, like something wrong will happen. I much rather spend the amount of time that is needed to get this thing started, to get the beginning started correctly, because this is something that I'm going to be showcasing to anyone who is questioning what I'm doing, and to be able to promote this in successfully finishing the other two arcs, and at the same time being able to financially profit from this, and really get people behind this idea rather than just having words. This is one of my plans, to really have something substantial to base off when I finish arc number 3, to have an exhibition ready, and the books, the physical books that I want, to be sort of in the process of accepting pre-orders to finish them and deliver them. That is my plan. So I need to have something physical, metaphorically, for everyone to witness and understand what's the potential of this. So arc number 1 has a lot of things at stake into making the beginning of what it can be something beautiful. And I don't feel stressed about the weight that this has, because I know that in time everything can be made. If I cannot make it in December, I can make it in January. And if I cannot make it in January, I can make it in February, which is not a big deal. But it's always great to have a deadline to really put all your things and your energy and your time into a very secluded and specific way of going. And that's what I'm aiming. That's what I'm trying to do. But at the same time, having a false and restrictive deadline can be a hindrance in you being able to elevate and rethink things. Because if I recall back in November when I began this, I had such a very simple and narrow perspective of what I could do. And in fact, my first ever design that I've shared was sort of like a trial that I had some the paper tearing on me, given that it wasn't a good quality paper, and I thought it was going to be a lot simpler and such. And I realized how that wasn't the case, and I needed to do it properly and better, and better sort of preparation. And I did, and it took me almost a month to finish the first design, and that design had 3 different iterations to get it up to speed on the other designs that I've been sort of improving on. And now that I can reach the sort of mark of me reaching the 3 major compositions, I'm very confident in knowing where I stand, and I'm confident in knowing where I need to improve. So with them, given that I have more scale, more space, I can really add this wow factor that can really add to the whole visual aesthetic of it. And alongside the visual, alongside the designs, you can have words, different forms of narrative, poems, the narration, other types of snippets of stories that you're going to be finding laying around. And those are going to have their respective drawings, their respective illustrations. Not in a sense of like too in-depth, just a page or 2, or that can be found in the other arcs as well. So I'm trying to build up a library of whatever you collect, you can have in access, that when other arcs sort of enter into the equation of you experiencing the story, arc number 1 things and stuff that you're going to be finding can be referenced in arc number 2 or arc number 3. Imagine if you uncover a page and then you realize, and with the flavor text that sort of gives you an impression that other pages may exist, and you further that story, you progress that story front of whatever what I'm trying to tell you in the specific moment in other arcs that you can sort of understand. And I find that beautiful. I find time and reflection, both in story and in life, to be essential. And the way that I'm delivering story in this particular concept that I'm having, I am giving you just enough for you to realize the scope of things and have more questions in the end rather than in the beginning. And through those questions, they're going to be slowly be answering in the arcs to come. Not in a very linear fashion as like, oh, it's a straight line, I have this question, I'm going to find it, but in a more personalized way, meaning that if I show you a circle, everyone can say it's a circle. But if I put a circle within other shapes inside, the direction of a person's or an individual's sort of perspective of which of the shapes inside along this big circle that are inside, which stand out, and in which sort of section and perspective you've seen them, will be a unique and personal observation. And with it, with these small sort of details, you can form in your personality and your perspective what makes sense to you. And that's the beauty in storytelling, and that's the beauty in art. Your individualism can be reflected in whatever you're experiencing, provided you know how to question it. And what I'm trying to do is teach everyone who's going to take this journey the appropriate questions to ask. And part of it will be me teaching how to experience and how to navigate art in general. And I'm giving you a fictional story in a real scenario that happened in history, and with it, I'm creating a bracket and a sort of a circle that you can exist in, and you can apply a factual historical element to your personal and humanitarian and slash your humanity behind this figure that you can relate or you cannot relate, or whatever the equivalent of you trying to understand another person. And it's fascinating. It's quite amazing to have that much power in art, and I value that extremely, and in fact is what I think is the most necessary and the true potential of this medium. And by medium I mean any medium that falls the category of a creative approach, be it music, art, anything that you can find this artistic element of putting personality behind a profession. It's a bit ambitious, and there's lots of questions for me as I'm going through it. But the important part is having the direction in my mind and having the concept that I want. The evolution of it is the beauty. The evolution of not knowing is what drives you and drives me personally to keep asking and coming back every day. Because when you know, you're just fulfilling a checklist. But when you don't, you are sort of playing this dance of, I know this next step, but the other 3 steps ahead, I have no idea what they are. And I can only know when I take the next step. So it's a battle of character, and at the same time, a reflection of the world that I see and the world that I have in my head that I'm pouring for anyone that is interested out there. Given that the form of this story that it's going to be comprehended is something that doesn't really reward someone who doesn't have a lot of time. And the more time you give it, the more attention and story and reflections you're gonna have in yourself. So imagine all of this that I've explained, the sheer excitement, the sheer how do I actually do all this, putting them in a deadline. It's kind of impossible at some points, because as I said, with the concept of knowing the next step only when you take it so you can understand the other ones, and if you don't take the next step, you will have no possible way of understanding any of the other future steps. It's everything an estimate. And this is what I'm trying to always remind myself, that I may not know how things are going to evolve, but what I know is that today that I'm sitting here or experiencing this thing or going out and seeing this specific life example or nature sort of being its thing, and how our planet evolves as we evolve in the seasons, and all of the references that I can have, how that makes me feel today based on the question that I've established a year or 2 years ago. That's how I evolve and I progress through a story. I have a question, and that question can take many different paths, but the initial question that I had in the beginning remains. It can have other questions afterwards, but I will always come back to the initial question. And with it, I cannot stray away. I can add different pathways, sort of create different sort of twists and turns, and pave ways that I haven't considered before, but I'm still in the same vicinity as the intent. And I've been thinking about that a lot. I've been thinking about, I may not be able to meet deadlines that I put in the beginning, and the reason of it being that is that I at the beginning, when I set the deadline, I think it's a quite straightforward approach to it. But as I get into it, I find other pathways that lead me in the end result, but in much more interesting and deviating in ways that are exciting and reflecting more of the life that I feel needs to be represented behind this story. Because it's one thing to leave something that you're creating, and another thing to study and have fractions of what you've lived and experienced in your life, and fractions of what you've read and understood other people's experience are, so you can implement it truthfully in your story. And it has a version of both that needs to be done right to be considered and understood in a appropriate and respectful way in this time period that I'm depicting, and to the people that have been affected in the time period that I'm depicting. So yeah, although I am in away from the studio right now and traveling, all these thoughts accompany me daily. And I'm sure as I'm going to be exploring this, well, it is a familiar environment given that I've been there since I was a kid, but getting off from your normal routine when you're depicting something, when you're strictly trying to force yourself in a specific navigating pathway, deviating and having this break of both environment and weather and situation and people, you get to be inspired more. And I'm probably going to be writing a lot of my observations that are going to be added into the Stonemason. And if any case, the location that I'm going to be going is where I visually got inspired by the tower of the Stonemason. I'm going to be talking more about it when the time comes, but it's very fascinating revisiting now that I've progressed a year into the story, a year into this sort of theme, and going back to see it within my new eyes, my new mindset, and a much more elaborate pathway into the desired answer of my question. So I wanted to express that. I wanted to get it off into the logs, even though it's unconventional, given that I'm not really progressing physically the work. Know that I'm progressing it in my mind, and the weeks between 41 and 42 log, which is going to count as log 42, is a period where I took a break and really went back to the location that it all started, this mindset and this visual approach, and really see it in a different direction. And when log 43 comes, which is going to be the next week on the 19th of August, You're gonna be hearing a lot of what has transcribed in the travel and how is that helping me or hindering me in progressing. Because it's not really as linear as something that can be positive or negative. Anything that can be experienced, even if it's perceived positive or perceived negative, it helps you understand where you're standing in the story. And that's what I'm going to be finding out. And thank you for entertaining this unique and very obscure rant in my mind on the logs. And hopefully you're going to be enjoying this talk. And I'll be seeing you next week.